I mean, I think you have to have some communication there, I would imagine, and regular meetings to make sure all those different functions are all aligned.
Yeah, monthly brainstorms.
Sure.
Constantly re-looking at things.
Absolutely.
To improve upon it.
And you talk about branding elements. There's a podcast on campus that's award-winning.
4 years in a row, Chris.
4 years. Oh. Look at this guy. So 4 years in a row, award-winning Big Brains podcast.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Big Brains team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of those moments where you have award-winning content for a reason. And there's a lot that goes into it. And part of that is the identity of it and the branding of it. And from what I understand, you're involved in some of that process. What goes into that?
That was a tough challenge.
Yeah.
When you're creating a podcast in a university environment, you want to reach beyond the university into, you want people to, first of all, respond to the content. And then maybe later they find out, oh, this is coming from the University of Chicago. So you kind of have to put the brand of the podcast a little bit forward.
Sure.
And then have the university backdrop so that it reaches more people. Because there may be people who may not want to listen to a podcast coming from a university, but they might want to listen to a podcast about climate change or whatever content, that they've searched.
Sure.
So it kind of broadens it. The one thing when we started working on the new Big Brains branding, I did a refresh in 2019.
Okay.
Wanted it to really feel fresh and exciting and like something we always knew was happening. So we have a brain icon and we change out the color for each
fitting for Big Brains.
Yeah, we but it's kind of in the background.
Yeah.
We change the color weekly to kind of let you know, hey, this is a new episode coming out.
I love that. It's such a little thing that as a regular listener, you would see, oh, new color, new episode.
Yeah, and we didn't want it to feel medical. We wanted it to look kind of fun, like this is just, really heady content coming at you.
Sure.
So that's kind of where that started. And then we always pair it with like a photo of our guest that's going to be on the episode. I think it works nicely.
I would agree. And I think, the little nuances of the branding element of it, I love it. Is there something that went into the Big Brains as the name? Were you part of that process at all?
I wasn't. I believe our Paul Rand, who actually is the host of the podcast, I believe he came up with the name. So
we'll have to ask him.
Yeah, we'll have to reach out to him. But
we will.
I love the name.
I love the name too, and I think it really. Everyone coming out of the university, is a big brain.
Yeah.
And everyone we have on the show is a big brain. We have leading scholars coming on the show from across the country. So
I would say those are some big brains.
Yeah. And you can have a lot of fun from a branding perspective. One time we did like a spring big brain hunt.
Sure.
You see Easter egg hunts in the spring. Well, we did a big brain hunt. Created squishy brains, like those little brains, stress ball brains. All different colors, hid them across campus, or we gave those out. And then we had like 6 golden brains that were full of different fun things like t-shirts and all this fun, podcast branded stuff. And probably some gift certificates too. And we just hid them in our campus area.
I love a good scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
And you've got a great campus to do that.
Yeah, we do have our annual scav. So it's kind of all thematic. That was a real ton of fun. But everybody has a big brain on campus.
The gears are turning in my head right now, Adam, where I'm thinking about a lot of the work we'll do on fully custom ideas. And we've caught some buzz with a Squishmallow knockoff, if you will.
Yes, we have.
And so if that is ever something that the Big Brains team wants to explore, talk to us. We can help bring that brain to life in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we're looking for any brain ideas you have.
Yeah.
We've seen pens with brains on top, but the more clever it is, the better, like not as obvious.
Absolutely. I think clever with promo is always a win. Anytime you can get creative, you can make something that you can't just go get on a shelf somewhere. That's where you've got that magic moment in that giveaway and that engaging touch point.
Yeah, and I've told you I'd love to have you kind of chime in on how it might look in our bookstore, like creating a display area.
Yeah.
hmm Lori, question for you, kind of switching gears here. I mean, a lot of times when we're speaking with the universities that we work with, right, we hear that the licensing, marketing, and branding is kind of like the wild, wild west when it comes to getting your logo printed on correctly and on different types of items, right? So, I mean, talking to you through lunch and through the podcast now, it seems like you guys have a really good your hands on a lot of this stuff as far as control goes, right? What kind of advice would you give to some of those universities out there that might have or some of the people that might have the same role as you, where you're trying to really corral a lot of this stuff and make sure that you're using the logo correctly, or using approved brands, or using approved PMS colors, logo usage, all those things that go into really controlling the brand.
Well, we're fortunate that our president and provost really felt strongly and backed us on, building our brand and perfecting it. So starting there is very helpful.
Got to have that internal support.
Yeah, every month or every quarter we provide a document showing all the new logos we've created so that they can see the before and after. So that um, support across campus is super, super helpful. And we have a communicators network, and they also are part of it. So everyone kind of getting everyone to kind of get on board with what you're doing. And then a huge thing that will really be helpful is to develop a strong relationship with your licensing team. So we work with CLC, and
Yeah.
Tim Clausen and I work very closely together. We created licensing sheets. So every brand, whether it's a school, the Big Brains podcast, they all have their own licensing sheet. So all the vendors can reference it. We've picked out let me think.
I can tell you as a vendor, we appreciate
Yeah,
that.
seriously.
Yeah, you like our licensing sheets. Well,
Yeah.
took a
Yes.
lot of
Yes.
time.
Yes.
So those are available to everyone, and we also call out embroidery color and fabric color, and we have two different maroons, one that's only available on campus,
Sure.
and then the one that we use for licensing, which is for our vendors to match their apparel.
Okay.
So sometimes you need two, because if you're working with let me think of who is it, Adidas or Nike. One of them has, it's Champion. They always have a more crimson colored
Sure.
garment. So we like to, show them that this is what we're expecting. So don't
Right.
go more crimson, go more towards the darker
The darker
burgundy if you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
that's important.
that shade is always a tough shade to manage and manage expectations for your community, because to that point, there's a lot of variety across the marketplace for shades of what is deemed maroon. So
Yeah.
I guess, do you run into that a lot where you see folks ordering stuff that maybe looks a little more cardinal than it should, or maybe looks a little more plum than it should?
Well, that's another thing over the past 6 years I've been able to get a good grip on. So I work directly with our bookstore group,
Sure.
and I walk the store with them, or sometimes I do a store audit every few months, and I send an email PDF showing all the pictures of the garments that shouldn't be ordered again, that need modification. So working directly with your licensing directors or group and your bookstore is going to really tighten your brand quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome, Laurie. I mean, I commend you. That's a really great job that you do, right? And keeping the brand on pace and exactly how you guys want it, right? We believe that the brands that we work with, right, they're living, breathing things. And I think you talked about it earlier, how long it took you guys to, I think, 2 years to kind of get your system going, right? I mean, a brand is never finished, right? You're always going to be growing and thinking of the next thing that you guys can do. So that's really, really cool the way you guys have put this all together.
Thank you.
Yeah, and within the brand itself, you've got some really interesting marks and spirit elements between the Phoenix and the old Gothic UChicago mark, and the crest that everyone knows. How do you manage use of those logos across departments when maybe a department wants to take this mark and combine it with that, or maybe take something from athletics, and what does that look like on campus?
Well, that was a problem in the past.
Yeah.
I think we've got a handle on that now. But the thing is, you have different marks, and you have to have clear description how those can be used.
I commend you for that. 'Cause this is the conversation we see.
Our guidelines are
from
very
campus
clear.
to campus, and it's not always so crystal clear
It's
on
crystal
that
clear
internal side
now.
of campus.
It's very crystal clear now. And I have divided out each page of the guidelines. So I send that off to whatever person is, if it's color, I send the color page. So it's good not to overwhelm people with an entire 120-page document.
Well, they're not going to read it if you drop it like that.
I sent individual PDF pages. There was something that was reminding me of I wanted to mention.
Well, that's a best practice for sure, to send individual, timely, and relevant pages.
Yes, because people are overwhelmed by too many words.
Yes.
And even, as time goes on.
I was going to say, I think that's only gotten worse, frankly, through time, where now everyone's wired with TikTok videos and everything, where attention span is just shortening.
Yeah, and the other thing we've done is we have a resources page on the UChicago creative website, and that's really important too as a brand director. We have a resource page that says, here's where you download the guidelines. Here's where you download our assets. Here's where you can find the photo dam. Here's where you can download, logos. Very clear.
I love that. And it's readily available for any employee to go reference.
Yeah.
You talk about the Phoenix on campus. What a cool mascot. And, Phoenix rises from the ashes. Is there a little bit of a history there with the city of Chicago and the Phoenix?
We've never really been able to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Assuming so.
Are there some tall tales about?
I don't have any tall tales.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm hoping to create a mascot that can be used on merchandise and apparel moving forward. Sure. That's kind of a goal of mine over the next few years.
I think that's something we've seen from a few institutions, where you're trying to find a mark that can be tied to a more historical mark like that just reinvigorates the brand and gets people excited and for something new and fresh, but is familiar.
Yeah. Our UChicago Gothic word mark does that also. You've seen it.
Yeah.
And
we got it on the video board out there.
Yeah, when I walked in, it was like 10 feet wide. Yeah. That's a great element to have too. And when you're working with your bookstore, it's so great to partner with them and really look at trends. So you have to have some flexibility too when it comes to bookstore merchandise. You have to loosen the reins a little bit because people want trends.
Absolutely.
So that's another thing.
And the trends change pretty quickly.
They do.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that you have a little bit of leeway there to work closely with your bookstore to have popular items in the store.
So, Laurie, we talk about some of these really fun branding initiatives, right? And obviously with a big name brand like you guys have, right? What is maybe one of your favorite initiatives or projects that you've ever worked on before?
Well, I worked on a series called The Day Tomorrow Began, and that was really challenging as well as really fun. So we're highlighting groundbreaking discoveries at the university. Each episode we did was probably under 3 minutes, somewhere in the 2 to 3 minute.
Sure.
And it's telling a quick story about this groundbreaking research, which was challenging to come up with a script and to tell that entire story in under 3 minutes, I believe. But it was really fascinating because we brought the entire team together.
Yeah.
So we had, our news team come together with our multimedia team and our editorial team. We all came together and created these amazing storyboards and told the story of the university. And then we worked together with an animator to help bring it to life. But that was one of the best things I worked on. If you go to The Day Tomorrow Began, you can see it on YouTube, the entire series. But I think you'll find it really fun. And we did kind of a neat collage-y type treatment. And we had the same voice throughout all the pieces. So there was a lot of continuity. And then we ended up creating a portable display that we could move around across campus for different events like convocation, or if someone was having a special event and they wanted to, really highlight what the work we've been doing. So.
Yeah, that's cool. I was going to ask that about, you said the voice across them all, right? Was there a special narrator that we would know? Was there any special guests that we would know?
Well, we didn't have guests because
everyone's
pretty much past
Gotcha.
But we did have the same narrator.
Cool.
Yes.
Guests in spirit.
Yes, because we're talking, people from like the 1800s.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
All the way up to current day.
Very cool.
So.
Awesome. Quite the project.
Yeah. I mean, I think anytime you're taking years of research and years of work that goes into something like that and then condensing it to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work and a lot of storytelling, and you have to be thoughtful and tactful with every second of those 3 minutes.
Yeah. Richard Thaler is someone that comes to mind that is a current economist. Mm-hmm. He's someone that you may know.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
I don't, but maybe Chris does.
I'll have to do some research.
Yeah.
When it comes to that secondary color palette you mentioned earlier, it was something that I think is new and exciting for the brand relatively to the history of the brand. I would imagine that starts to come into the fashion element too that you were just talking about at the bookstore, where you've got different colors that might be trending. Pantone every year comes out with the color of the year.
Yes.
Sometimes it aligns perfectly with someone's secondary color palette. But I think that's a trend we've seen a lot across higher ed, is embracing that secondary palette rather than it's there but only to be used in like a digital fashion on certain applications. There seems to be a loosening of the reins just in general with the secondary color palette. So do you see that being the case a little bit at UChicago too?
Well, I would say when you walk into the bookstore, you're going to mostly see a sea of maroon and gray.
Sure.
Mostly maroon.
Fitting.
But there might be a little splash of color here and there.
Sure.
But I would say that secondary palette's more used on our campus events, like maybe someone's like we did the Southside Science Fair,
okay,
which was really a lot of fun to work on. That happened last year, but we used the secondary palette to like appeal to the younger audience. We had a lot of kids coming from the south side of Chicago, which is our neighborhood that we are located in. So we really wanted to have a fun, friendly feeling. So a lot of our events can leverage that secondary palette. Or sometimes like Big Brains, for instance, we definitely leverage secondary palette.
Is that the color of the brains that you use?
We have our rainbow brains. So we switch that out. It just adds a little spark of, interest. But it has to complement the maroon.
Yes. Makes sense. You want to still know that it's the university.
Yes.
Do you ever incorporate anything to do with either the Chicago skyline or Chicago flag into anything you guys are doing?
Actually, I just did that for the Mansueto Institute. I created a new logo for their brand identity and brought in the Chicago skyline.
Very cool.
So you'll be seeing that. It's a brand new logo.
Very fun. I think anytime you've got a campus that's in a metropolitan area like Chicago, New York, LA, you name it, tapping into the vibe of the city and those brand elements that are part of that geography, what a asset to have as a branding element. So I love that you're bringing that into a mark.
Yeah, and a lot of our aerial photography, you can see the city in the background. So it just draws more people to the university because we live in this beautiful city and on the lake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many wonderful places to go in Chicago. So we do definitely, bring that element into us.
It's in the name of the university.
Yes, it is.
I think you look at your career journey, everything that's gone into you being in the seat you're in today and being in higher ed. There's always designers that are in training, looking to maybe enter a career in graphic design, be creative. What words of advice would you give to those folks that are maybe listening right now that are current students, either at the University of Chicago or elsewhere, to really explore what you can do from a career path with design?
Well, I think the main thing is to figure out where your heart is and like what kind of things are important to you. For instance, I like working in higher ed because everything we do there is improving the world.
Sure.
I'm not doing design
it's like mission-driven design.
Yeah.
Mission-driven design. It's really important. So, you can pick different paths, but it's where your heart lies. If you're into sports, you might want to go down a different path, or you could do, work for the athletics team at the university.
That's true.
So there are so many different ways you can take design, and you're making an impact wherever you work as a designer. So
yeah, it goes back to that purpose, right? You're not just creating this art so someone can just throw it on a t-shirt anywhere, right? You're really creating it for a reason, for initiative, for inspiration, right? All those things that I'm sure that still inspire you today to do what you do.
yes, and after 25 years of doing advertising, doing that mission-driven design is really important to me. And as an artist, I do a lot of social um, designs that have a social impact or social element to them. So it all kind of connects. And
Yeah.
because we have the Harris School of Public Policy, so all the things going on campus from a social aspect, diversity, all of those things come into my personal artwork.
Sure.
So I find it really fulfilling to be in the environment.
I think that's a great call out, and to follow where your heart lies on that design element. Because I would imagine if you don't align those things from a designer's perspective, you're going to run into a creative roadblock, and you're not going to get the
Yes.
fulfillment out of it that it sounds like you get out of your work.
Absolutely. And as a young designer, I put many hours into what I was doing. So if you're not really into what you're doing, you're just not going to be a happy person. So if you can find an environment where you can do work that's aligned with who you are and make a difference and you feel good about it, you're going to be a much happier designer.
I think that statement bleeds into, I think, a lot of career paths.
Yeah.
And I look at the two of us at this table. We've both been here for a combined 20 plus years.
Oh, man, don't say it.
I'll say it. I'll say it, Adam. But we wouldn't be here for this long if we didn't get that sense of fulfillment out of it as well. So I think that's wise words for, even if you're not a designer, trying to find your career path, follow what speaks to you.
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, Laurie, it has been a treat sitting down with you today, talking about all things UChicago branding, University of Chicago. I think you've got a lot of great things you've put into place from a control perspective, a lot of procedures you've empowered your community with, a lot of ways that you can just make things easy for folks. And you're doing some exciting work. I'm sure there's bright things on the horizon on campus. I look forward to seeing all things evolving with the brand as the year progresses.
Yeah, we're going to hold you to that. We might be sending people your way to ask for some help and some tips and tricks that you've put in place yourself.
Yeah, and I might be sending people your way too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Laurie.